The grand chamber of the Galactic Council hummed with anxious murmurs. Representatives of 47 species sat in their designated alcoves, their forms illuminated by the soft blue glow emanating from the central dais. The chamber had been in continuous session for 3 days, an unprecedented duration even for a crisis meeting. Ambassador Kayla, of Varia Prime, stood at the speaking platform, her pale blue skin dull with exhaustion. Once vibrant markings along her temples had faded to a ghostly white, a physiological sign of extreme stress among Varians. Her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted her formal diplomatic robes, a garment that suddenly felt too heavy for her slender frame. "Honorable representatives," she began, her melodic voice carrying the distinctive harmonic undertones of her species. "I thank you for your continued attention during this emergency session. As I have detailed over the previous cycles, Varia Prime faces an extinction-level event that requires immediate intervention." Chairman Vex, a tall, spindly Nexian with 6-fingered hands and reflective eyes, nodded gravely. "The Council acknowledges Varia Prime's petition for emergency assistance. Representatives, please review the evidence presented thus far before we proceed to allocation discussions." A holographic projection materialized above the central dais, displaying a rotating image of Varia Prime, once the jewel of the Cygnus Arm, renowned across the galaxy for its sweeping azure oceans, emerald forests, and the delicate crystalline cities that reflected the planet's twin suns in rainbow patterns. The Varians were celebrated as master artists, philosophers, and musicians, their pacifistic culture having never known internal war in 7,000 years of recorded history. But the hologram before the Council showed a different world now. Vast swaths of the main continent appeared as gray-brown patches, dead zones where lush forests had turned to dust. The once vibrant oceans were clouded with spreading black tendrils, evidence of the parasitic organisms that had begun consuming everything in their path. 3 standard months ago," Kayla continued, "an asteroid impacted our southern hemisphere. Initial assessments classified it as a minimal threat. Its composition appeared standard, its impact zone remote, but within days, we discovered the asteroid carried microscopic parasitic organisms unlike anything in our biological records." She gestured, and the hologram zoomed to a molecular view, revealing writhing, worm-like entities that pulsed with an unnatural inner light. "These parasites consume organic matter at an exponential rate, converting it to toxic compounds that further poison soil, water, and atmosphere. They are impervious to all conventional containment measures we've attempted. As of this moment, 30% of our main continent is uninhabitable. 12 billion of my people are at imminent risk. Our most conservative projections indicate Varia Prime will be uninhabitable within 6 standard months." A shocked silence fell over the chamber, broken only by the soft hum of life support systems and the occasional rustle of movement. The representative of the Alari Confederation, a gelatinous being housed in an elegant containment sphere, was the first to respond. "Varia Prime has been a valued trading partner and cultural beacon for generations. The Alari offer immediate dispatch of 50 atmospheric purifiers and 200 medical specialists. The Nexian delegation pledged advanced terraforming equipment sufficient to reclaim perhaps 5% of the affected areas, while the Depths Alliance offered to evacuate 500,000 Varians to their water worlds, where compatible habitation domes could be constructed within weeks." Kayla acknowledged each offer with the traditional Varian gesture of gratitude, right hand over heart, left extended palm upward. But the hollow look in her large, almond-shaped eyes revealed the truth. These contributions, while sincere, were nowhere near enough to save her world. Council protocols typically limited emergency aid to what member species could spare without significant impact to their own civilizations. A practical, if heartbreaking constraint of interstellar diplomacy. As the pledges continued, each generous by Council standards, yet catastrophically inadequate for the scale of Varia's crisis. Ambassador Kayla fought to maintain her composure. The thought of her beautiful world, with its floating gardens and crystal spires, its ancient forests where philosophers had contemplated the nature of existence for millennia, reduced to a toxic wasteland, was almost unbearable. Chairman Vex was about to call for a formal tally of pledged resources when a movement from the back of the chamber caught everyone's attention. The human delegation's alcove, typically quiet during council proceedings, stirred as their representative rose to his feet. Admiral Marcus Kane stood tall, his weathered face impassive beneath close-cropped silver hair. His midnight blue uniform, adorned with subtle insignia and campaign ribbons, seemed to absorb the chamber's light rather than reflect it. Humans were relatively new to the council, having achieved faster-than-light travel only 2 centuries earlier, and they remained something of an enigma to the galactic community. Their homeworld, Earth, was classified as a death world, a planet with environmental conditions so harsh that most council species would perish within hours of exposure. The humans' surprisingly rapid expansion into space had been watched with a mixture of fascination and unease. "The United Earth Confederation will handle this situation," Admiral Kane stated simply, his deep voice carrying easily across the chamber without amplification. A confused murmur rippled through the assembly. Chairman Vex tilted his elongated head. "Clarify handle, Admiral. Are you offering supplemental aid to complement the Council's collective response?" "No, Chairman. I'm informing the Council that Earth will resolve the Varian crisis completely. We will eliminate the parasitic threat, detoxify the affected regions, and restore Varia Prime to habitability. Additionally, we will evacuate and shelter the Varian population as needed during the restoration process." The chamber erupted in a chorus of voices. Some delegates chittered in disbelief. Others buzzed with questions. A few representatives of older species exchanged knowing glances, having witnessed humanity's unorthodox approach to interstellar relations before. Ambassador Kayla stared at the human with undisguised incredulity. "Admiral Kane, while I appreciate your enthusiasm, perhaps you misunderstand the magnitude of our situation. We're discussing the potential extinction of my species, the complete ecological collapse of an entire planet." A ghost of a smile touched the Admiral's lips. "I understand perfectly, Ambassador. With your permission, I'd like to place a quantum call to Earth." Chairman Vex gestured consent, and Admiral Kane activated a communication device on his wrist. The holographic display shifted, now showing a severe-looking woman in a similar uniform, adorned with additional insignia. The nameplate identified her as General Torres, Earth Fleet High Command. "Admiral Kane," she acknowledged, her expression professionally neutral. "General, I've informed the Council that Earth will address the Varian crisis, requesting appropriate authorization and resource allocation." General Torres didn't hesitate. "Authorization granted. I've reviewed the preliminary data you transmitted. How many vessels do you require for the first wave?" 47 should suffice for initial response. Full fleet support to follow as the situation develops." The general nodded, as if this were a routine request. "Consider it done. The 3rd and 7th response fleets can deploy immediately, with the 2nd Terraforming Division and 5th Biocontainment Group. The President has authorized everything we have protocol." Kayla's translucent eyelids flickered rapidly, the Varian equivalent of astonished blinking. "Everything? You have?" Admiral Kane turned to her. "This will be Earth's largest mobilization since the colony rush of 2387. In addition to combat vessels, we're sending terraforming ships, mobile bioweapon laboratories, atmosphere processors, evacuation transports, and medical facilities." The implications slowly dawned on the Council representatives. The humans weren't offering token assistance. They were committing their civilization's full resources to a planet that wasn't even their ally, merely a fellow Council member in need. "May I ask why?" Kayla found herself whispering. Admiral Kane regarded her thoughtfully. Because we can, Ambassador. Because we should. Earth was nearly lost 3 times in our history. To war, to environmental collapse, to a plague not unlike what your world faces now. Each time, we survived by throwing everything we had at the problem. It's become our way. On the holographic display, General Torres was already issuing rapid commands to officers outside the frame. Kayla could hear fragments. Full deployment orders. Civilian Volunteer Corps. Converted cargo vessels for supplementary transport. The first wave will arrive at Varia Prime within 6 standard days. Admiral Kane continued. We'll need your scientists to transmit all available data on the parasite immediately. My staff will coordinate with your government to prepare for our arrival. Chairman Vex had regained his composure. Admiral, while the Council appreciates Earth's extraordinary offer, there are protocols for collective response. With respect, Chairman, Kane interrupted, something rarely done in Council proceedings. This isn't a collective response. This is Earth responding to a humanitarian crisis, according to our capabilities and values. We welcome any council member who wishes to contribute, but we're proceeding regardless. The news of Earth's unprecedented commitment spread across the galaxy at quantum speeds. On human worlds and colonies, the response was immediate and overwhelming. Retired fleet officers reported for duty. Civilian ships volunteered for conversion to support vessels. Universities emptied as specialists in biology, planetary engineering, and medicine rushed to join the effort. A phrase began appearing in news feeds, social forums, and eventually official communications. Deathworlders don't do small aid. It quickly became the unofficial motto of the mission, emblazoned on equipment, vessels, and the uniforms of volunteers. What had begun as Admiral Kane's unilateral promise was transforming into a movement that united humanity's fractious colonies and political factions in common purpose. Ambassador Kayla found herself caught between desperate hope and skeptical caution. The human promise seemed too good to be true, yet the evidence of their mobilization was undeniable. As she prepared to return to Varia Prime, ahead of the human fleet, she sought out Admiral Kane for one final conversation. She found him in the Council's observation deck, gazing out at the stars. Admiral, may I speak frankly? He turned, offering a respectful nod. Always, Ambassador. My people are facing extinction. I cannot afford diplomatic niceties or political games. Tell me truthfully, can your people truly save my world? Or is this grandstanding for political capital within the Council? The Admiral studied her for a long moment. Ambassador Kayla, humanity evolved on a world that tried to kill us every day. Predators, diseases, natural disasters, extreme temperature variations, Earth forged us in crisis. Our history is a chronicle of catastrophes survived and overcome. When we look at Varia Prime, we don't see an impossible task. We see Tuesday. His calm confidence sent an unexpected shiver through Kayla. What do you want in return? She asked quietly. Nothing. Admiral, please. No civilization commits such resources without... You misunderstand our motivations. Ambassador, Earth doesn't need payment or political favors. What we need, what drives us, is purpose, meaning. For millennia, we fought each other. Now we fight extinction events, terraform hostile worlds, engineer solutions to crises that would destroy less resilient species. It's not charity, it's who we are. As Kayla's shuttle departed for Varia Prime, she watched the Council station recede against the backdrop of infinite stars. For the first time since the asteroid's impact, she allowed herself to feel a fragile emotion, hope. 6 days later, exactly as promised, humanity arrived at Varia Prime. Kayla stood in the Planetary Defense Command Center, surrounded by Varian scientists and military officials, all staring in silent awe at the tactical display. 47 vessels had materialized in perfect formation, 2 light hours from Varia Prime, a distance chosen, Admiral Kane had explained, to avoid causing gravitational disruptions to the already stressed planetary systems. "Verification complete," announced the Chief of Planetary Defense, her voice trembling slightly. 47 vessels of Earth origin. Configuration matches their transmitted specifications. Energy signatures are considerable. The fleet was unlike anything in Varian records. The vessels didn't share a uniform design. Some were sleek and predatory. Others, massive and industrial. Still others resembled floating cities. They ranged in size from nimble corvettes to behemoths larger than Varia's most populous arcologies. "Incoming transmission," the communications officer reported. The main screen activated to show Admiral Kane on the bridge of his flagship. "Ambassador Kayla," he greeted her. "The first response fleet has arrived as promised. With your government's permission, we'll begin deployment immediately. Our initial assessment teams need to reach the most severely affected areas within the next 12 hours. Kayla found her voice. "Of course, Admiral. We've prepared landing zones as requested. Our scientific teams await your specialists with all our collected data." "Excellent. Captain Hayes will lead the ground team. His vessels are launching now." The tactical display showed smaller craft detaching from the fleet, accelerating toward Varia Prime with surprising speed. Within an hour, the first human ships entered the atmosphere, heading directly for the worst contamination zones, areas where no Varian could survive without extreme protective measures. Kayla, accompanied by a small delegation, traveled to the edge of a designated hot zone to witness the humans' arrival. Through environment-sealed transport windows, they watched in astonishment as human personnel emerged from their landing craft, wearing what appeared to be remarkably lightweight environmental armor. Where Varian protective gear was bulky and cumbersome, the humans moved with easy grace in form-fitting suits that seemed almost like a second skin. Captain Hayes, distinguishable by red markings on his armor, approached their transport and established communication. "Ambassador, we've completed initial atmospheric sampling. The contamination levels here are approximately 20 times what would be lethal for humans without protection. But our suits are handling it well. We'll establish forward operating base Alpha at these coordinates and begin immediate containment procedures." As Kayla watched, teams of humans efficiently deployed prefabricated structures, laboratory equipment, and what appeared to be defensive perimeters. They moved through toxic clouds that would have killed a Varian in seconds, seemingly unconcerned. "How are they doing this?" whispered Tira, Kayla's aide. "The toxin concentration here is beyond anything we've measured before." "Deathworlders," Kayla murmured, recalling Admiral Kane's words. "Their homeworld forged them differently than ours forged us." Within hours, the first human scientific teams had collected samples of the parasites and established containment laboratories. Dr. Park, the fleet's chief xenobiologist, requested a meeting with Varian scientists to compare notes. Kayla attended, curious to see how the collaboration would develop. Dr. Park was a slight woman with intense eyes and quick, precise movements. "The good news," she began without preamble, "is that we've seen similar organisms before. The molecular structure resembles extremophile parasites from Earth's deep-sea thermal vents, with some characteristics of our Arctic iceworms. The bad news is that these are considerably more aggressive and adaptive." She displayed a holographic model of the parasite's cellular structure. "They're converting organic material into compounds rich in sulfur and heavy metals, essentially weaponizing your planet's biomass against itself. But they have a weakness. Their reproductive cycle requires a specific enzyme chain that we can target." As Dr. Park explained her team's findings, Kayla noticed something striking about the human scientists. Where her own people approached problems with careful, methodical caution, a product of their evolutionary history on a benign world, the humans attacked challenges with an almost predatory intensity. They didn't seem discouraged by the scale of the disaster. If anything, they appeared energized by it. While the scientific teams worked on biological countermeasures, another aspect of the human response was taking shape. Commander Blake, a logistics specialist, had been tasked with addressing the displacement of variant populations from contaminated regions. Within days, human vessels began constructing what they called refugee microcities in safe zones. Tira returned from touring one such facility, her expression a mixture of amazement and disquiet. Ambassador, they've built habitation for 5 million people in 3 days. Not emergency shelters, actual cities, with hospitals, schools, water purification, power generation. They're building 12 of these simultaneously. Are they adequate for our needs? Kayla asked, concerned about cultural compatibility. Tira hesitated. They're better than many of our existing cities. Ambassador, the human engineers studied our architecture and improved upon it, while maintaining aesthetic compatibility. They've even incorporated spaces for artistic creation and philosophical contemplation. They researched our cultural requirements. The scale and efficiency of the human response began to attract attention beyond Varia Prime. Council observers arrived to monitor the situation, their reports feeding a growing debate in the galactic community. Some representatives expressed admiration for Earth's humanitarian commitment. Others voiced concern about human expansionism, disguised as aid. Kayla found herself wrestling with similar questions. The salvation of her world was becoming increasingly certain, but at what cost to Varian autonomy? The humans were establishing a permanent presence, integrating themselves into the planet's recovery and reconstruction. Would they leave once the crisis passed? Or was this the beginning of a more complicated relationship? Her concerns were interrupted by news from the scientific front. After 2 weeks of intensive work, Dr. Park's team announced they had developed a targeted bioweapon against the parasites. Unlike conventional weapons, this was a precision tool designed to attack only the specific molecular signatures of the invasive organisms, while leaving Varian biology untouched. We're ready for the first large-scale deployment, Dr. Park informed Kayla during a briefing. We'll target the southern continent's central contamination zone. If successful, we can scale up immediately for planetary application. The operation was unlike anything in Varian military history. Human vessels positioned themselves in a precise grid pattern over the affected region. At exactly synchronized moments, they released clouds of engineered microorganisms that descended like golden mist onto the blackened landscape. Upon contact with the parasites, the bioweapons initiated a chain reaction that caused the invasive organisms to self-terminate, essentially vaporizing on a molecular level. Kayla observed from a monitoring station, scarcely breathing as sensors tracked the process. Within hours, parasite activity in the test zone had decreased by 70%. Within a day, it registered 0. It's working, Dr. Park confirmed, allowing herself a small smile. The parasites aren't just dying, they're being converted into compounds that will actually help restoration efforts. Phase 2 can begin immediately. Phase 2 revealed yet another aspect of human capability that astonished the Varians. Enormous vessels that Admiral Kane identified as terraformers moved into low orbit, deploying atmospheric processing arrays that began systematically filtering toxins from Varia's air. These machines worked with astonishing efficiency, reducing atmospheric contamination by 12% per hour, while simultaneously infusing the air with health-boosting trace elements. On the ground, specialized teams began soil reclamation, using technology that separated toxic compounds from viable earth. The process was visible to the naked eye, a wave of renewal spreading outward from each treatment center, transforming dead gray terrain back to rich, living soil. 3 weeks into the human intervention, Kayla stood at the edge of what had been one of the most severely contaminated zones, where before there had been only death and decay. Green shoots now pushed through revitalized soil. The air, while still requiring filtration masks for variants, registered as 80% cleaner than before treatment began. "We're ahead of schedule," Admiral Kane informed her as they surveyed the transformation. "The parasite reproduction cycle has completely collapsed. At current rates, we'll have the entire planet below toxicity thresholds within 2 months, with full restoration of most ecosystems within 6. Kayla found herself speechless as she witnessed an entire continent visibly healing before her eyes. It was a transformative moment of awe. The realization that what her people had considered an extinction-level event was, to humans, simply a problem to be solved with sufficient application of technology and determination. News of the rapid recovery spread quickly across Council worlds. Feeds carried images of Varia Prime's restoration, along with astonished commentary. Humans terraform entire planets in days. The species that had initially offered token aid, the Alari, the Nexians, the Depths Alliance, found themselves recalibrating their estimates of human capability. What other crises might these Deathworlders tackle with such overwhelming force? How would this shift the balance of influence within the Council? As the immediate emergency receded, the nature of the human presence on Varia Prime began to evolve. The temporary refugee cities transformed into thriving communities where humans and Varians lived and worked side by side. Human engineers collaborated with Varian architects to design new kinds of structures that combined the beauty of traditional Varian crystal work with the resilience of Earth-derived materials. 3 months after the fleet's arrival, the statistics told an astonishing story. 68% of contamination cleared, 83% reduction in atmospheric toxins, new infrastructure supporting both the original Varian population and a growing human presence. What had begun as emergency aid was becoming something entirely new, a fusion of civilizations. Chairman Vex called a special council session, not to coordinate crisis response this time, but to understand the implications of what had occurred. Ambassador Kayla once again found herself at the speaking platform. But now, she stood tall, her skin vibrant, the markings on her temples glowing with renewed vitality. The holographic display above the council dais showed a transformed Varia Prime, lush and green once more, its oceans clear, its cities gleaming in the light of twin suns. New elements dotted the landscape, terraforming stations, atmospheric processors, and the distinctive architecture of combined human-Varian settlements. "Honored representatives," Kayla began. 3 months ago, I stood before you with news of my world's impending destruction. Today, I bring news of its rebirth. Through the intervention of Earth, Varia Prime has not only been saved, but enhanced. Our ecosystem now shows greater resilience than before the crisis. Our cities incorporate technologies that will protect us from similar threats in the future. Admiral Kane, seated now among the Earth delegation rather than standing at attention, nodded slightly at her words. "But beyond the physical restoration," Kayla continued, "we have witnessed something perhaps more significant, a demonstration of what interstellar cooperation truly means. The humans did not offer token aid. They committed their civilization's full capacity to our survival." Chairman Vex leaned forward. "Admiral Kane, the Council would appreciate Earth's perspective on this intervention. We note that human forces remain on Varia Prime in substantial numbers. What are your long-term intentions?" The Admiral rose. "Our intention, Chairman, is to ensure Varia Prime never faces such a threat again. The Varian government has accepted our proposal for a permanent joint monitoring and rapid response system. Several thousand human specialists will remain, integrated with Varian counterparts, maintaining the new technologies we've implemented and training local personnel. So this was not merely humanitarian aid, but a colonization effort?" asked the Alari representative, their gelatinous form pulsing with skepticism. "We don't view these categories as mutually exclusive," Kane replied evenly. Earth's standard for humanitarian intervention has always included permanent solutions. Half measures cost more in the long run, in lives, resources, and stability. We build to last. The council chamber filled with murmurs as representatives grappled with a civilization whose baseline for humanitarian aid was nothing less than complete galactic restructuring. Some expressed admiration, others concern, but none could deny the results. As the session concluded, Kayla found herself walking alongside Admiral Kane in the council's garden promenade. The artificial environment mimicked a Nexian forest, with towering purple vegetation and small floating light organisms that drifted between visitors like curious fish. "Your council seems troubled by our methods, Ambassador," Kane observed. Kayla considered her response carefully. The council, indeed, most galactic civilizations, operates on principles of minimal intervention and gradual change. Your people are disruptive to that paradigm. "We noticed," Kane replied with the hint of a smile. "Disruption is our specialty." "Before you came," Kayla said, "I believed my world was doomed. Now I wonder if perhaps it was always meant to encounter Earth. If this crisis was actually the beginning of something extraordinary." "That's very philosophical of you, Ambassador. Very Varian. And your response is very practical. Very human." She paused beneath a canopy of bioluminescent leaves. "The monitoring station you mentioned, the Joint Human-Varian Facility, what capabilities will it have beyond parasite detection?" Admiral Kane gazed upward, his weathered face illuminated by the soft glow. "It will have whatever capabilities are needed to protect your world, Ambassador, and perhaps others." Kayla understood then what the humans had known from the beginning, that their response to Varia Prime's crisis wasn't just about saving one world, but about establishing a new standard for interstellar cooperation, about showing the galaxy what was possible when a civilization forged in adversity applied its full strength to preservation rather than conquest. In the weeks that followed, as the Council debated the implications of Earth's intervention, a new structure took shape in orbit around Varia Prime, the Joint Monitoring Station, a gleaming complex of laboratories, defensive systems, and living quarters, maintained constant vigilance over the recovered world below. Its most visible feature was a powerful beacon that shone out into the stars, not as a warning, but as a promise. Deathworlders don't do small aid, they send fleets.